Hey everybody, and welcome to the True Crime Squad. This is Katie Weaver. I'm here with my sister, co-host, and partner in crime, Kristi Brower. Hello.
Hello, hey guys.
And Miss Sandy Kitty, of course.
And Miss Sandy Kitty, yes, she's now insistent upon being on every live stream.
I have noticed that lately.
She has heard she has fans out there on the internet, and so I'm always trying to help keep her from flashing her butt on camera. But yeah, here she is.
She'll do it. You know she will.
She will. Yeah, she's very proud. Very, very, very proud.
Indeed. Well, welcome. What a weird freaking day, huh?
Oh my gosh. Such a weird, like, I don't even know what to say about it kind of day, you know?
I hate the energy of the defense.
Yeah.
It just, yesterday and today, felt heavy and ominous. And also disjointed and disorganized and screwed up and kind of all the things.
It was so strange. Like, I just felt like everything feels wrong and weird and nothing went to plan. Pryor can't plan a damn thing. Sorry, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm using my laptop as a tablet to finish editing and getting up the last few videos I made of today. 'Cause I tried to condense some things down into what was actually said because it was so disjointed and weird that it was hard to in a lot of places really understand what the hell just happened.
Yeah.
So anyway,
well, good.
I've got it all done. I'm just getting it uploaded so that we can use it. So
well, we appreciate it because I think we are all kind of had our heads spinning and also like, what the hell is the point of all of this?
yeah, and I mean, some of that we're going to still have to conjecture, especially Steve Schmidt. Like, what?
Yeah.
The hell was that?
For sure. Want to welcome Daisy, first time. So said she's been listening for a long time, but her first time in the chat. So welcome, and welcome to all of you in the chat for sure. Be sure you hit that like button if you haven't. That helps us to show up and to grow. So we appreciate that. So we're actually going to take a step back in time to yesterday. Not too far, don't worry. But we're going to take a step back to Joseph yesterday and start there. Paula wanted to know, do we think the kids believe that they are telling the truth, or do they believe what Chad did was okay because he's a prophet, so they lied for him? I'm becoming more convinced that they really have not studied this case. That by his direction, they really didn't watch any of Lori's or study it, that there are things they really don't know.
I agree. I mean, do they not know anything? No, I think they do know some things. But did they really? Guys, you got to remember, indoctrinated people are obedient. Okay? And as Mormon kids, it was beat into our heads from the time we were little children to be obedient to our parents, to our church leaders, to the church itself. And these guys are a great example of that. I think their dad has said, the only person who can tell you what really happened is me. I don't want you to listen to anyone else. And I genuinely think that they would follow that.
I feel like that's true. And they do seem very cold about the dead children. There seems to be no concern in them at all about Tylee and JJ.
Awful. Yeah. Hate it.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Joe made some fatal errors, Miss Vixen. I agree with you totally. So let's talk about it. So, of course, we start with Joe yesterday. And I had talked about the fact that when the kids were missing, Joseph was prolific on the internet defending Chad. And to anybody who had the nerve to say, what the hell's going on? Somebody needs to talk to Chad Daybell about this. He was all over people. The people are innocent until proven guilty, and you people just don't know the story, and it's none of your business. And he and his dad both were awful on the internet. Like, awful. Uh-oh, we're echoing.
Can't do it that way. Never mind. Okay.
But so that's kind of that's my taste of him. As you know, he has harassed Nate Eaton to the point that when Nate was flying over the house in the helicopter that morning when the kids were found, on his way when he started his special report, he said, "Hi, Joseph. See you soon." For that reason, because he had been
Yeah.
on Idaho News' socials harassing the bejesus out of them.
Yes.
This was done
He
like
had.
4 years ago. We went back last night to try to find what we could, and it looks to me like he's pretty much scrubbed his social.
He has. Yeah, you can't really find anything really much past the date of the kids being found on social from him. So he's
Mhm.
probably got new accounts under a different name. And because, like, I went back to that Life in Rexburg group that you were talking about, and yeah, it's all gone.
Mhm. Mhm.
Him and his dad both.
Yep.
But I don't know if you
GSI.
caught it today, but they have an attorney. It was mentioned at one point,
Mhm.
and I would imagine that they have an attorney who said, "Do not, under any circumstances,
Mhm.
say any more shit on the internet.
Yep.
Just don't do it."
Mhm. I think that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Uh, GSI thinks that is worried that he scored some points today. I don't think so, and I'll tell you why as we go through this.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go ahead and get started. So, of course, they start with Emma being called to the stand. He says that Joseph and Emma have been married for 7 years. They now have 3 kids. They just had a baby. And so he starts out with October 19th. Or sorry, October 9th, of course, the day that Tammy was shot with the paintball gun. And this is such a weird story. And we heard this had heard this already from Emma, and I was so confused because it's not what law enforcement has said. And I was so confused about what I heard, and I was anxious to hear what Joseph said, and it confirmed that what she said, and I'm confused. So we had been told in the past from law enforcement, particularly from Deputy Cannon, that when he got out there, that Joseph told him that he was outside in his yard, he heard Tammy scream, and he came running.
Right.
Right? That was the
We've heard
story
that
that
story a zillion
a
times.
million times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then we hear no, Joe says he was chopping wood in the woodshed when he had a notification on his phone and looked at it, and it was a post from Tammy into a local community group talking about being shot at by this paintball gun. So he
Yeah.
went into the house to tell Emma, who had also just seen it on Facebook. How coincidental.
Yeah.
And then they talked to Tammy, and then he called 911. The one thing it does give us a picture of, because we had thought that there was quite a delay from the time this happened to the time that Tammy called the police,
Yeah.
and it was because Joe had
Yeah.
supposedly gone through all of these steps and then decided to call. I'm still very confused about why he called. I don't
Right.
think he thought Tammy was going to call, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But that was her story to tell. It was her call to make, and I'm still confused about why he did and kind of confused things. But at any rate, he did.
Mm-hmm.
So that's his story. So there's, both of those things. So Amber said she went back and listened to his 911 call, and that does support that story. So we don't know if what happened. If he says that Coulter Cannon just has all of the wrong information, which is a little weird to me because
Well, but I mean, if you listen to Joe, Joe
mhm,
hates the police.
yeah.
He's made that very clear.
Yeah. Yep. And we'll get to that too. Yes. So he said in the Facebook post that Tammy said it was a paintball gun. So then, of course, we have to have another long ass conversation about paintball guns, paintball gun, paintball gun. Fine.
I'm so fucking tired of paintball guns. I cannot even stand
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
So, of course, he says after he called 911, he was kind of watching and he saw Deputy Cannon pull up in his vehicle and he went out and talked to him. He says that,
Again, he goes out in the street and speaks to him.
yeah,
This, he did not witness anything.
yeah,
He learns secondhand about the whole thing. But
Mm-hmm.
who talks to the police first? Him. He
Him.
was just putting himself right in the middle of it.
Yeah. Joe's profession, as far as I know, last I knew Teresa, he worked in the cafeteria at the hospital.
Yeah. He talked about that,
Mm-hmm.
or we heard that somewhere at one point, but I don't know if it's
Mm-hmm.
still
Well,
the
at one point, a
case.
contact I have at the hospital had called me and said that he had quit that day and said he was moving to Utah and wasn't going to be back. And then 5 minutes later, not 5 minutes, but within a couple of days, he was back at work. So I don't know what happened
Interesting.
there. But that was maybe 6 months ago. I even drove past their house a couple of times to see if they were actually moving out, but it didn't look like it.
Interesting.
I was always kind of curious about what happened there. But anyway, of course, Pryor asked him if there was even a discussion about whether or not it was a paintball gun. And he said it wasn't because it was obviously a paintball gun.
Except he wasn't even there for
Mm-hmm.
that conversation. He put himself in the middle of this
Mm-hmm.
again. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah. So then they talk about the Dodge Dakota. And, as we know, he got it in December from Chad. In fact, when I went out and took pictures yesterday of the back of the silver shed so we could get a sense of where the raccoon cemetery is,
Mm-hmm.
it is parked out in their field like it's broken down.
Ah,
Uh, so he says because of his job at the hospital, he would often cross paths with Chad as he was headed to the Salem church to write around 9 a.m.
okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, Jan, sure. As you love to say.
Though that story confused me too because he said he works shift work and he begins at noon. And so he would cross paths with Chad as he was headed to the Salem church to write around 9.
Right. Like,
So
what does that
make that
mean?
make
Where was.
sense. Yeah. He
Oh,
also
oh
said,
no, he did say that he had to take their little boy to daycare, or their kid to daycare.
mm-hmm,
Maybe that's when he took the kid to daycare.
but maybe. He said that Chad does do some writing at BYUI library, which we know that's been said. He said the
Mm-hmm.
majority of each day, Chad was either writing at the church or the campus. Uh huh. Or just in his car, texting and calling his girlfriend off the hook. Let's be real.
Right. Come on.
Yeah. So, of course, he asks who was the primary driver of the Dodge Dakota, Tammy or Chad, and Joe says Tammy was. Until
Yeah.
they bought a black.
Initially.
Mm-hmm. Until they bought a black Equinox, and then Tammy drove that. Because don't you know, Tammy always had to drive the nicer of the cars. Yeah.
I mean, the dissing of Tammy is so gross and so obvious. It is
Mm-hmm.
bizarre to me.
Yeah. I also wonder if Chad was constantly sitting in the church parking lot, why somebody hadn't wondered why. Because that's weird. And
Well,
honestly,
Heather
just
Daybell had
hanging
wondered why.
around LDS church chapels is discouraged. These
Right.
aren't churches that are just unlocked all the time that you can just go into to worship or
Not at
to
all.
spend time. They are locked down. And unless you have
Yeah.
a reason to be there, you are not to be there.
Right.
So that does always come across to me as a little strange. But so then, of course, they talked about the book fair. And Tammy was driving the Dodge Dakota that day. Weird, huh? Why? Tammy didn't drive the Dodge Dakota, so I just don't understand.
Right. Like, please.
So apparently there'd been a push that year because it had gotten cold too fast, and there was a big push to try and get the potatoes in before they froze, which is a huge deal here in the fall.
Right.
I mean, our schools still close to help get the potatoes in. It's crazy. We worked as teenagers. We worked on a combine, which is a big piece of equipment that digs the potatoes and it runs them across into into trucks on a conveyor belt. And we, along with four other girls for years, would stand on the combine. You guys, this was so freaking dangerous and crazy. We
Mm-hmm.
would stand on the combine, and as the potatoes would come past, you had to pick out as many rocks and dirt clods and anything that came through, dead animals occasionally that came through, so that they didn't go into the cellar. And then when they get to the cellar, they go on another conveyor belt into the big pile of spuds where they sort them again. And anyway, that's what when they say working in potatoes, that's you're either on the combine or you're running one of those pieces of equipment, or you're driving a truck. But it's super dangerous. People lose fingers and limbs every year in potatoes. But we would stand on that combine and laugh and throw mud at each other and carry on and sing. And oh my gosh, I'm sure they wondered who the hell they had hired, but we had a lot of fun.
We did. We had a good time with it. We made it a
Mm-hmm.
party. You
We did.
can, as you can imagine, because well, we are us. So you
We
guys
would
know.
also take home the biggest potato we could find every day, every one of us, and we'd bake them and bring them back the next day and eat them for our lunch. We were hardcore.
Hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, that's what potatoes is like around here, but it is a huge deal because it's a big part of our economy, and the farmers a lot of times in the fall are desperate to get those potatoes in. So anyway,
Right.
when he was talking about spuds, I'm like, oh yes, yes, yes,
Hmm.
I know. So Joe had apparently been helping get a friend work potatoes and get his spuds in, and he picked Emma up from school because at the time apparently they only had one working vehicle. So Tammy told Joe he could use her truck and that she and Emma could go home together. So he had to get her keys. Now they've made a real big point that those keys had the truck and the Equinox keys on them. Don't be messing around here that she had the keys to the truck. She had her own set of keys. Okay, fine. He says he
Whatever.
used the truck and returned it to their house around 5:30, and he handed Tammy the keys, and she was sitting on the couch. And Pryor dead ass said, well, was she like sitting on the couch or was she all spread out? Don't ever say that again. All spread
Hmm.
out?
The
Dear
hell,
God.
dumbass.
And after a woman works all damn day and all week long on Friday night, if she wants to be all spread out on her couch, she sure can be. It doesn't mean
Right.
she's fixing to die, for Christ's sake.
No.
But
I
I
know.
couldn't
It's
believe he
just
asked that like that.
rude, gross,
Yeah,
stupid.
as usual, lazy Tammy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Chad was also there. I'm sure sitting politely in the corner. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Or, locked under the stairs. You know.
Hmm.
So he said that she seemed exhausted. He said she was carrying around several scholastic school boxes that were pretty heavy and seemed exhausted and exasperated. Okay, my question was, Joe, why weren't you carrying them then?
Hmm.
If you walked into
Right.
the school and your mother in law was packing around a bunch of heavy boxes, which Emma said it was 2 boxes, he said
Hmm.
several, uh, but
Death by book fair.
yes. But if that was the case, why didn't you help her,
Right.
jackass? That's
Yeah.
just, uh, again, I was like, what? What is this family? Lots of things. That's what. Anyway, the next morning, he was getting ready for work and he said he saw a deputy vehicle outside and got worried that maybe Garth had had a problem or not come home from work. So he went inside and told Emma. Emma called Garth and Chad and Tammy, and no one answered. And so they walked across the street to see what happened. And Garth told them that Tammy had died. They didn't even call Emma.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? Super weird.
Joe says Chad was wandering aimlessly around holding his head, saying, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Uh huh. Literally, no one else has said that.
Mm-mm.
So now, because Pryor does everything in such a zigzag, he asks about how far Joe's house was from Chad's house. They lived kitty corner. Then he asks about, or they did at the time. Then he asks about the raccoon problems. The raccoon invasion of 2019.
I
And he
swear.
said,
At this
yeah,
point, there were millions, you guys. Millions of raccoons.
right. They were getting into the animal feed bins. So a neighbor offered them to use a trap, and the raccoons were caught. And see, we think they caught him and shot him and buried him behind the shed. From what's said, what's actually true, who the hell knows? But that's
Right.
kind of what was implied.
Mm-hmm.
Then he asks about that red shed. It's the bigger kind of barn looking uh, feature. He says he borrowed tools from the neighbor or from Chad's red shed. And he says that shed was never locked, and it's about the distance from the wall behind him where Pryor is standing at the podium. I wasn't sure what that meant, but
Implying that anybody could have been in and out of there, some random stranger that buried
yeah,
Tylee and JJ in Chad's backyard to frame
right.
him, whatever.
Which
I think it
not
was the
really.
mm-mm,
It's definitely further away than he indicated, but
mm-hmm,
also you'd have to pull into their driveway a ways and then kind of through the gate to get into their pasture without opening a like a swing gate is and to get like to that shed, you'd have to pull pretty far into their driveway. Like you wouldn't be able to just go on their property likely without them knowing.
mm-hmm, yeah.
That idea that somebody could just sneak out there and do all this nefarious stuff I thought was asinine because no you couldn't. Not only that, out in the country, when people pull into your driveway, you know it because people
Mm-hmm,
don't come into your driveway constantly, you know?
right. Yeah.
Anyway, then they talk about there being two driveways. We know there's a short driveway on the northwest side that's on the Salem Highway side.
Mm-hmm,
And then, of course, on the other side of the house, and this is the side where the big memorial was for the kids on the fence. You guys have seen our videos before. Uh, that's where there's a much longer driveway, and that's how you would access the pasture. But again, like you would have to take some steps. It's not like the pasture's wide open. There are fences.
right. Yeah, it's fenced all the way around.
Hmm. Then, of course, he asks where JJ and Tylee were buried, and he says in the backyard.
Uses the word. Everyone uses the word.
Hmm. Uh, he asks if someone could access the burial sites from the driveway and not be visible. Joseph says that's possible. It is not. I disagree with that entirely. Entirely. And partly because there's a canal. And so you couldn't just access the property from any point you wanted to. There's a canal. You would have to go into their driveway, period. Full stop. But, you know, okay.
Ina says Joe was a curtain twitcher and noticed the cops, but didn't see digging fires and strangers burying something in the property.
Yeah.
Right? He
Yeah.
obviously is somebody who would be a curtain twitcher,
Hmm.
checking on everything all the time, thinks he's in
Absolutely.
charge, that kind of bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah. Then he says that after Chad was arrested, Detective Hermosillo drove by their property several times a week. Well, first of all, he's at work. Who knows what he's doing and working on? Second
Yeah.
of all, so have a lot of people. That is a very busy, well-traveled road.
Mm-hmm.
We drive past their house quite a bit, and not just for the joy of it, just because of where we're going. I think
Yeah.
it's so stupid, these ideas that there's some kind of harassment that was going on by
Well,
police
it's
officers
fucked
having
up.
the nerve to drive past their house.
Well, and I mean, after they excavated that crime scene, yeah, he's going to be paying attention
Yeah.
because he's looking at these people who moved
Hmm.
into that house knowing
Hmm.
that those kids were buried in that backyard, and he had to
Hmm.
have been going, what
Yeah.
the hell is wrong with these people, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and, they had some beef going down with Garth because Garth lied to the grand jury. Of course they were keeping an eye on this shit. Of course they
Yeah,
were.
they
It
weren't
drives
sure
this.
what the hell was going on.
And also, you guys think you were harassed by the police? Go talk to some people who have actually been harassed by the police. You
Right.
know, not around here. That's not typically what
Mm-mm.
happens here, per se. But in other places, people who have been truly harassed and treated unfairly by the police, because this ain't it.
No, it is
Ridiculous.
not.
So
The,
then,
the indignation of the investigation, the finding of the children, the
mm-hmm,
determining Tammy's death a murder is
mm-hmm,
so telling and gross about these people. Like, wouldn't you want this to be solved?
yeah. Aren't you heartbroken that children were murdered? No, you're not. It's very weird.
Mm-hmm.
Then they talk about the stupid 5K race in September 2019. As we know, it was a fundraiser for Operation Underground. Operation Underground Railroad, which is even worse.
Gross.
But Tammy and their publishing company sponsored the race. He said she was a volunteer in the race. She didn't run it. But as we know, other people testified that yes, she did, that they saw her crossing the finish line. So again, it's just the same. And we also know that apparently Chad in jail calls was giving Emma instructions about what she should say about the marathon and referring back to a marathon in 2013 and that maybe that's what you should say. So I'm guessing in 2013 she didn't try to run it. Yeah. Hey, Melody. Good to see you. Okay. So then apparently Joe went to Sunday school at church and there was a lesson by Matt Daybell. And Wixom objects on relevance and it's sustained. And basically all he's able to get out of him is that he got a lot of dirty looks at church. And the deputy prosecutor for Fremont County at the time made a pretty nasty post about the case. So that would have been Tanya
Rawlings.
Yeah, Rawlings. I have no idea what it was said. They didn't actually bring that in as evidence. They didn't show it. They didn't quote what she said. And so who knows what was actually said? Because these guys think if somebody looks at them sideways, they've been harassed. So who knows what was actually said? I'm seriously doubting it was pretty nasty. Or maybe even GSI, anything.
Right. The prosecutor alluded to that coaching from Chad about the marathon. We have not heard the actual call yet, although I am sure we're going to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I would think so. Then they talk about the effing Fitbit. And he says there was a family joke going about Tammy shaking her arm to get more steps on the Fitbit, and that his dad was losing a lot of weight and Tammy was just really jealous. Are you motherfucking kidding me? I literally said I have to go to Boise right now. Yeah. I was like, right now. Are you kidding me, Joe, that you would say that about your deceased mother-in-law? Are you kidding me? She wasn't jealous. Oh, that kills me. How dare you?
The maligning of your dead mother or dead mother-in-law is the grossest shit I've ever seen in my life. She is awful. The victim in this case.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't know it from these idiots.
No. God. No.
Our mom is dead. I cannot imagine getting on the stand and saying anything disparaging about my dead mother.
No.
Can you imagine?
No.
Crazy.
No, I can't. Horrible. Spread out. Yeah, FOS list for sure, Victoria. Straight to the top. That killed me. Saying jealous, my jaw dropped. Like, I already don't like that guy, but are you effing kidding?
Right.
I'm trying to be polite today. Can you tell?
Yeah, he was in on bullying Tammy, Teresa. I agree.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Who said that? Oh, no, that was Gran. Sorry.
Yeah, without a doubt. So that was where they left it yesterday. So then today, we head back in. There is immediately a meeting in chambers with the attorneys. And we finally get going again with Joseph Murray on the stand. So, and we were starting with cross. So it was Rocky Wixom on cross. And he says that obviously the loss of Tammy would be a traumatic experience for the family, and Joseph agrees. And that
sure doesn't seem like it, frankly.
And yeah, finding the bodies of the kids on the property has been traumatic. They don't act like any of that's been traumatic.
No.
He said he and his wife have had many conversations over the past few years about the case. I'm afraid that you have, but that you haven't. You only know what you've been told. And so...
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was very clearly stated with Emma. You only know what you've been told.
Yep. So Wixom asks if he's had many conversations with his siblings about the case. He said they've talked, but not many conversations. But see, as far as until the kids were found, and that's where I'll leave it because I don't know after that, Joe's dad was defending Chad rabidly on Facebook.
But he was asking about Emma's siblings there.
Oh, he said
What they
his siblings, but yeah,
I
you're
know, but what
probably
they said
right.
in court was it was Emma's siblings.
Okay. Uh, Wixom, he asked him about the shooting of Tammy, and he confirmed, or shooting the paintball gun incident, and he confirms that he didn't actually see it. He kind of nails him down about that a couple of times about, like, you weren't there, right? No. You didn't actually see any of this. No. You don't know what kind of gun it was. Well, no, you don't.
Yeah, you didn't see any of it.
Then he asks about his testimony at the grand jury, because, of course, he was also called to testify at the first grand jury. And that at the grand jury, he had said he had no knowledge about the shooting and how it went down. And Joseph agrees that's correct. Trying to make sure that the jury's clear that Joseph actually doesn't know anything. All he knows is what he was told. He didn't see a thing.
Right.
So then he asks him about calling 911 and about meeting with with Deputy Cannon, and the fact that he denied that he ever heard Tammy scream. And he says that that's correct. So he then says that he thinks that Detective Cannon, or Deputy Cannon, was intentionally inaccurate in his report. He said he was very clear in what he explained to him. Why would Cannon lie about that? Why?
If you listen to Joe talk, he talks like he's got his own nuts in his mouth, just like Chad Daybell does.
He does.
And he was excited and freaked out and talking really fast.
Yep.
And the prosecutor said, do you think maybe that Deputy Cannon could have just heard you wrong?
Yeah.
No.
No.
I was very clear.
Yeah.
And I don't think he is.
Mm-mm.
I should have brought a longer clip of him talking. I have a very short clip that is really the mic drop of this cross. But Joe has maybe a little bit of a speech impediment, and he can be a little difficult to understand. And I'll bet speaking fast and like hyped up, he was difficult to understand.
And he may very well have said that to Deputy Cannon. Cannon had absolutely no reason to lie.
Right. Why would he lie about that? Like, that's so stupid.
Absolutely. And he definitely had an attitude with Wixom. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
They hate the prosecutor's office. They hate the police.
Yeah.
So he said after he gave his information to Cannon, he had no further conversations with him. Then they talk about him borrowing Tammy's truck on the 18th. Tammy's truck on the 18th. Every time it's Tammy's truck, and he agrees it's Tammy's truck. Well, this time he corrected and said it's his in-laws' truck. He had to go to Tammy to get the keys. Tammy had the truck at the school where she was working, as we know. And he got the keys. When he was done with the truck, he returned them. And then, of course, the truck was actually given to him a couple of months later because they only had one car. Then he shows a bank record on the screen. And I think this was brilliant. He showed that on June 9th, the day the kids were found, there was an $8,000 deposit into Joe's banking account. It was, and he was an ass about this. Wixom asks him who made the deposit, and Joe doesn't know. And he says, well, did it come from Chad? And he says, oh, yes, it was from Chad. You don't know.
Well, it just says $8,000 on there. It doesn't say who sent it.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
But you don't know who sent it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Wixom, emphasizes, okay, so back in December, he gave you that truck. Yeah. And then he gave you $8,000 here. And then he let you move into his house. And then also, didn't Chad give Emma $9,000 in cash that day too? And he agrees. I mean, these guys have benefited from Chad, pretty extensively over the years since Tammy died.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the key. I have a very brief clip, but this is the key, I think, to what Wixom was trying to bring out in that testimony, and it's this right here.
So he gave you roughly $17,000 in cash. Correct. Had given you one of his vehicles, correct?
Yep.
And gave you a place to live, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that not bribery, you guys?
Right.
Did Chad not just buy Emma and Joe's loyalty in this situation And they said, sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I did want to say one quick thing. I heard a little rumor from a little birdie that Joe Murray's mother thinks Chad is guilty.
Really?
Yeah. I also heard that Dad's pretty weird and there's a lot of chaos in that family.
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't seem surprising at this point.
Yeah.
But that mom thinks, yeah, he did it.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
Teachers make 85 to 90K in New York? Well, yeah,
Boy,
no.
They sure don't
They
in
make
Idaho.
about half that in Idaho.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then he asks if he's ever met Lori Vallow. He says yes. He said they met the day after Tammy's funeral at Chad's house. He said he never met Alex Cox and never saw Alex on Chad's property. Then he asks about the long driveway, just more explaining what the topography of the property looks like, or the layout of the property. Then he asks him about testifying that Detective Hermosillo drove past the property. And he said, would it be unusual that detectives would drive by the property if they assumed bodies were buried there? He says that would not be unusual, but Hermosillo continued to drive by after the bodies were found.
Yeah, no shit.
It's a free country, bro. Those are just public roads.
Right.
He said, wouldn't it be possible that a detective might continue to drive by after 2 bodies were found on buried property? Joseph said, I don't think it was necessary. Well, yeah, you don't know shit.
Yeah.
And then he says he would rather do anything than be in law enforcement. Okay, that was a big mistake on his part.
Yeah.
This is Idaho. This is an incredibly red, back the blue kind of state. And being shitty about and talking shit on the police is not something that most people look kindly on.
Yeah,
And I
it doesn't-
promise you, there were people on the jury that did not appreciate that and haven't appreciated this whole case. Partly because there hasn't been any proof that the police have done anything out of pocket at all. And Pryor running around with his hair on fire trying to act like the police have been really egregious, there's no proof of it at all. And I have to believe that most of the jury listening to that goes, what's your problem? Or we're wondering, where does Detective Hermosillo live? Does he live out in this area? Does he have family out in this area? Like maybe he was just driving to go to someone's house. He even
And
said
maybe
he was doing
keeping an eye on these crazy freaking people.
Yeah.
Which he should have been.
Yeah. And then he says, well, he was even doing a slow drive-by on the Salem Highway. Joe, no, he fucking wasn't. The Salem Highway is a 50-mile-an-hour road, which in Idaho means it's a 65-mile-an-hour road. That is a dangerous, scary road. There's a flashing light right by their house because there have been so many wrecks there. When we were in high school, there was a horrific wreck at that same corner where these people live that claimed the lives of 5 teenagers, our friends.
Yeah.
It was the most horrifying thing ever.
It was awful.
Nobody is doing a slow drive-by on that road. Nobody. I don't care what he's saying. There's no possible way. When we were out there to get a picture yesterday, well, let's just say it was Harry. Yeah.
It was.
It was. You can't just stop or slow down on that road. There is no easement. There is no curb. There's no gutter.
It was just
ditches.
like them talking about where would Alex have parked.
Exactly.
Right. Where would have Alex parked? You don't just park along that road. You do not do that.
Yeah.
It is a very narrow road.
Yeah. Yeah. I probably live about 5 miles from Chad, I would say. Wouldn't you say? I've never clocked it, but I would say about 5 miles.
Yeah, about 5 miles.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mayor said, I believe Hermosillo and company were guilty of carrying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, and I know that Wixom wasn't going to say this, but the other thing that people need to understand, not that Joseph would give a flying fuck, but the trauma that law enforcement has suffered over this case is immense. Yeah. And digging those children out of the ground made a big mark. And I would believe that any of them have driven past that house from time to time, just reflecting.
Trying to process.
Yeah. But it's
What the
true
hell
also that there
happened?
was a memorial for the kids across the street from the house at the neighbor's house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at first it was at the house until it was unceremoniously torn down after Chad's preliminary. But the neighbor allowed them to put it up across the street, and it was there for years. And it's down now, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it doesn't come back up around sentencing time. If it does, we'll go out there and get some footage for you. But he easily could have been visiting the memorial. He could have been putting a flower or a balloon or something there. There's a lot of reasons why he could be out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, it just bothers me, and it was a mistake. All of this police bashing has been a mistake. It has
really
not
has.
won points with the jury.
No, not at all.
Yep.
Huggy Bear says they made the same assessment.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Pryor's only defense is the cops set Chad up.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to allude to.
Mm-hmm.
Very poorly done.
Very poorly.
To.
Yep. So that was it for Wixom. Pryor comes back up on redirect. Just points out that all of the kids received $8,000 from Chad that day, and then he has nothing.
They didn't all receive $17,000, a car and a house, did they?
No. So then there's another sidebar, and then we see Dr. Kathy Raven. So we've already talked about Dr. Raven. She's a board-certified forensic pathologist. Worked in forensic pathology in one area or another for 25 years. They talk a little bit about her curriculum vitae and then move on. She's testified in over 300 cases. You have to understand, with these people who are willing to use their degrees to be a part of the defense or the prosecution, but to be expert witnesses, they are being paid handsomely to be there. And she was likely
making a professional expert witness like this one is.
Yeah. And she lives in Washington. So she was flown in here to do that testimony this morning. Now, she likely makes somewhere between $200 to $400 an hour just for her preliminary work on the case, whatever conversations or emails that she sends to the defense, and then makes somewhere around $500-ish, if not more, for her appearance. We don't know exactly what she was paid, but that's pretty standard in the industry.
Plus airfare, hotel, per diem, all of that.
All of those things.
She made several $1,000s doing this by the time she wrote a report and did her investigation and came here and testified.
But there's an interesting piece of that we'll get to, because we think maybe Pryor was being a little cheap with her. Or just devious. We don't know.
I think he wanted to keep her in the dark so that she would not find the same findings as the Utah medical examiner, honestly. But I think cheapness is part of it, for sure.
Yeah. So she explains what we've heard before. There's 5 manners of death: homicide, accident, suicide, undetermined, or natural. She says she paid close attention to Tammy's autopsy. She said it was a thorough autopsy and there was non-specific bruising on Tammy's body. Pryor asks what could have caused the bruises on the arms, and Raven says it's unknown, which is true. However, the ones on the arms look a lot like fingerprints if you look at them.
They sure do. They look a lot like the fingerprint bruises I've seen many times as a domestic violence advocate.
Absolutely, yeah. She says there was no anatomical cause of Tammy's death, meaning, she didn't die from the heavy lung. Did you notice that heavy lung was never mentioned today?
Never mentioned.
Not a single time. Crazy.
She didn't die from book fare or lavender overdose or anything.
Nothing at all. She had nothing.
Sleep apnea, because that was a new one that came up yesterday.
Yeah, no sleep apnea. This wasn't from chugging gallons of colloidal silver. None of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. She said the toxicology report was extensive, which we know that. It was what kept the autopsy took so long, because they did a huge toxicology report, and it didn't come up with anything. So they don't believe Tammy was poisoned. But again, and we've said this before, you've heard this before, but toxicology reports are not, it's not like they're like, run this for everything under the sun. That's not how they work.
No.
You've got to say, we're looking for XYZ, and then they're tested
Mm-hmm.
for that. And she said it's not uncommon for them to send out a toxicology, and when they get it back, then go, okay, well, it was none of those things, so now let's ask for these things.
Yeah.
So it can take a lot longer because you're kind of trying to rule some things out.
Yeah. And let's just clarify because there's some questions in the chat. She did not view Tammy's body.
No.
Her opinion is based entirely off the written reports that, and only the ones that she received.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was all. Yeah. So she talks about, because of course, Pryor has his hair on fire about everything about Tammy's autopsy and exhumation, but it was done in 2019, and the report wasn't signed until 2 years later. And he wants to know why there was such a gap. And she doesn't know. She says that probably the toxicology testing could have taken some time, but that's all she could think of. But again, she doesn't know. And if you notice, he did not ask that question of the Utah ME. He never asked them why it took so long to sign the report. He wasn't going to ask them. He wanted to make this look like it was yet another misstep,
Yeah. I think that's actually really common.
Mm-hmm.
That they allow for a lot of time to make sure all of their tests are back, all of their information is back, because signing it makes it the official report.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be totally sure, they're ready to say it is the official report.
Yep. He asks if the bruises on Tammy's arm possibly contributed to asphyxia. Yes. Having a bruise on your arm will definitely make you lose oxygen to your face.
Now we have death by bruise. My God.
Mm-hmm. She says the bruises were non-specific. He asks if someone dying from asphyxia, if someone could die from having someone sit on their chest. This one got fun, I think, because mostly on cross, though, because she said it would take more than 345 pounds, I think she said, from a report she had just recently read in order to put that much pressure on somebody's chest. And so it's really unlikely that sitting on somebody's chest could kill them. But we'll get there. He asked if there was damage to the neck or throat. She says no. He asks the difference between her report and Christensen's report, where he said asphyxia was the manner of death. She says there's nothing that points to asphyxia and believes the cause of death is undetermined. But again, he very carefully did not discuss with her the foam, the heavy lung, nothing about it.
Yeah. The red foam never even came up, you guys. Yep. How much time was spent talking about that foam in previous witnesses? Oh, these guys are saying it was 450. Yeah, 450 pounds.
450, okay. So then she says we get into seizures. Are there different kinds of seizures? Yes, she talks about different kinds of seizures. Some that, people literally just kind of space out, and some where people, make repetitive motions, etc. And again, can we just clear up the fact that had Tammy had a grand mal seizure in their bed, do you think there's any way Chad could have slept through that?
No.
There's no possible way. If you've ever seen a person,
probably had injuries. The bed would have been all messed up.
Oh gosh, if you've ever seen somebody have a seizure like that, it is incredibly violent and upsetting. There's no way in hell,
unsettling.
Yeah, you sleep through something like that, and it would have to be a pretty violent seizure to actually kill someone. We actually have a friend that died last summer from a seizure.
Yes,
but guess what? He had epilepsy. His seizure disorder was known and was being treated, and he did die from a seizure in bed. But you know how? Because he was on his stomach. Yeah. And his face got ground down into his pillow and he asphyxiated.
He did.
But that's how that happens, not someone laying on their back in bed who had never had a true recorded seizure before. All of this talk about she had these shaking incidences. Do you think that Tammy wouldn't have gone to the doctor? No one's
I'm
having
quite sure she would have.
seizures and doesn't go to the doctor.
Because
Yeah.
Tammy did go to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Juliet says, I remember George Floyd. Anyone else think of him during this case? I do.
Yes. Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. For a few reasons, actually, but yes. So then they talk about arrhythmia, an electrical disturbance in the heart, and that you may not see anything at the time of autopsy if someone dies from arrhythmia. So he asks what could have led to Tammy's death, and Dr. Raven says seizure, arrhythmia, or other things could have contributed. Didn't. There's no proof that they contributed, but could have. She said no conclusive scientific evidence shows how she dies. So that's all he has for his big expert witness. That was it. So Lindsay Blake comes up on cross, and she asks Dr. Raven, if she's an ME. She said she has been in the past, but is currently an independent contractor. What do you think that means about her? I don't know. I had thoughts.
That means
Probably.
that she is a professional witness.
Mm-hmm.
She's an independent contractor who is hired by defense attorneys. That's what that means.
Exactly. So she asks if she has investigators who work with her. She said she's in a coroner office system, whatever that means. And she asks who determines whether an autopsy should be conducted. Raven said it depends. It could be a coroner or a pathologist. Then she asks her about reviewing the autopsy report and any other pertinent information about it, and asks her to list what she has reviewed. And this is where it gets really freaking interesting. So what she has reviewed is the autopsy report by Dr. Marsden, though she couldn't speak to it at all. At all. She couldn't remember it. She couldn't speak to it at all.
She didn't even remember reading it.
Yeah. Autopsy photos, toxology records, brief investigative report from medical examiner, typed coroner report, Fremont County coroner informational record of death, report from Detective Greenhalgh, scene photos, report from Detective Mattingly, Fremont County incident report, Tammy's death certificate, and transcript of Dr. Christensen's testimony. So basically, she says those were the things she was given. And when they talked to Pryor, they also said when Pryor talked to her, she also said that some other documents came in later, but she didn't review any of those things. Do we have that or no?
We do not have that. No.
Okay. So then Blake
I'd kind of forgotten about that, but it's kind of funny.
So then Blake starts listing an extensive, dare I say, voluminous list of a billion other reports in this case. And each one, she says, but did you review this report? No. Did you review this report? No. This goes on for a hot minute. Pryor finally...
It includes Tammy's medical records, you guys.
Yes, Tammy's
she
medical
didn't
records.
even look at Tammy's medical records.
Nope. Never even looked at Tammy's medical records. Was never provided Tammy's medical records. Mm-mm. All of these reports Lindsay was listing, she wasn't even provided. Mm-mm. So finally Pryor is getting nervous, and he objects that there's no relevance here. And Lindsay says, well, Your Honor, these are all of the medical records that the Utah medical examiner used in their fact finding. Yeah. So I believe it's very relevant. Uh-huh. And the judge was like, okay, then, carry on.
I should have clipped that whole thing, but I didn't. But it's awesome.
It was a ton of information that she didn't even view.
Nothing.
None of it. So then, of course, they move on. I mean, this was a lot of stuff. I'm not going to list them all because it was a lot. But these, again, were all reports that were reviewed by the medical examiner in Utah. Raven says that none of these documents were provided to her, including Tammy's medical records. She also asked Dr. Raven if, in reviewed medical records, anything referenced shaking fits or seizure activities. She said no, she did not see anything like that. She asked where that information came from. Dr. Raven says it came from the coroner's report, and Lindsay says that information came from Chad Daybell, correct? And Raven doesn't know. So then again, she again verifies there was no structural damage to Tammy's death, or to Tammy's health, sorry. Blake asks about the bruises and putting pressure on someone's chest. Raven says to die from someone sitting on the chest, you would need at least 450 pounds of pressure. And Blake asks something about 2 people. If 2 people putting pressure on someone's chest could kill someone, and boy, she didn't know what to say. She really hedged around with, well, I mean, it would take a lot. It would take like 450 pounds of pressure. It would take a lot. The Chad was a big man, and Alex was, I wouldn't say a big man, but he was still a man. It was probably 200 pounds. Yeah. So could 2 big men working together compress Tammy's chest? And then she hits her up about, well, what about putting a pillow over someone's face? Could they die of asphyxia that way? They could. What about putting a bag over someone's head? Could that kill them? Could they die of asphyxia that way? They could. Yeah. She pins her down about several things like that. And of course, she has to agree because that's just flatly true.
Right.
So that's all Blake.
Oh, Maureen says this is what you get when you get a paid expert with a Groupon.
Well, we agree. We agree. We'll talk about it when we finish this testimony. But so then Pryor comes back on redirect, asks about the witnesses, the documents, etc., that Blake has witnessed. And of course, Raven's like, well, I only look at science. I don't look at all of those other things. I only look at science. That's how I was trained, and that's how everyone I train is trained. We only look at science. You wouldn't think her medical records are science, Dr. Raven? Right. Really?
Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't think that was science? I have the clip of the mic drop moment that occurred in this conversation when you're ready for it.
Yes, go for it.
Is that an example of confirmation bias when you take into account all of these other reports, documents, statements of people who were not present at the murder?
Not present at the murder. Pryor called it a murder. And you know who didn't correct him? Dr. Raven.
No, play that again. Let's do it again, just for fun.
Is that an example of confirmation bias when you take into account all of these other reports, documents, statements of people who were not present at the murder?
It happened quick. I hope the jury caught it. I don't know if they did, but we all did.
Oh,
holy shit. Because he's been talking about Tammy's death this whole trial. And today it was a murder.
Health death, her accidental death, her death by lavender oil. But today, that was huge. That was an enormous misstep. I'm not even sure he knew he did it.
He did not backtrack. He did not correct it. Neither did the witness. They just kept on going like it didn't happen.
Well, Blake really wanted to come back on recross, and the judge wouldn't let her.
Yeah, she tried.
Yeah. All right. So then the next witness we get is Rean Price. This is this sweet woman who had been a neighbor of theirs. And
now,
clearly
I have, because this was such a clusterfuck, I have the majority of, I have what's important from this testimony and from the cross.
Yeah. Well, good, because, Pryor, of course, couldn't get his tech working. Rean essentially was a neighbor out there and heard a gunshot. She's not sure what day. She thinks she knows what time. She obviously did not want to be there. She was very, very uncomfortable. And there is a brief interaction with law enforcement. So let's just see that, actually.
Yeah.
My husband and I both discussed just some strange events that happened with the Daybells over the last year.
Okay.
And it was my husband and I creating a timeline together because, like I've stated, I don't have any dates.
Okay.
But there was enough going on that we were trying to figure out where everything was so that by the time we did talk to a detective or a police officer, it was informational and resourceful and beneficial to
And
them.
do you recall in a later interview where there was a discussion about you and your husband and your husband made some mention about it, that he'd be a really good detective. Do you remember that discussion?
I remember that in the audio, but
Okay.
that was my husband, not me.
Okay. And do you remember the discussion that you would work through Joe Murray to try to get some information about locating the kids,
I do. I remember that.
and that you'd be willing to wear a wire?
I do. I remember that. There was children missing and I was willing to do whatever it took to find these children.
Right. And then in addition, there was some talk about the fact that your husband in the past had plowed up, done some cultivation for Joe's garden or something like that.
Yeah, that's correct. He did it for a lot of the neighbors around the
Right.
neighborhood.
And Officer K had offered to,
Objection, hearsay.
was there a discussion about using?
Hold on, there's a pending objection. It's sustained.
Was there a discussion about using police funds to help pay $50?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you engage in any discussion regarding accepting payment from the police to doing certain?
Objection, hearsay, misstates the evidence.
Overruled.
Did you do any kind of a discussion with the police for some sort of payment to work with the police and regarding the Daybell case?
I think in reference to that conversation that you're talking about, Officer K just comically said that, and it was more of a personal. It wasn't as an officer using officer funds.
And you took that as a joke, is that right?
I did.
All right, nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
I'll go with Ms. Price. So you testified that at some point you heard a gunshot, correct?
I did. Yes.
And that was in the early morning? Was that your testimony?
I believe it was.
Do you remember what day that took place? I believe it was your testimony that you didn't remember the specific day.
Yes, I don't remember the date.
Do you remember the time frame?
I don't. Just looking back at the audio, being refreshed with that, but as far as it's been 4 years, to my knowledge, it was just based off of that. It was morning, afternoon time, but not a specific time.
Could it have been at some point before September 9th?
Definitely.
Could it have been at some point after September 9th?
I don't recall it was after September 9th.
Okay. And out in the country, is it uncommon for people to have guns?
No, it's very common for people to have guns.
Okay. Now, you briefly testified about your discussion with Officer K. Would that be Detective Kaya Kamanu?
It is, yes.
Okay. And you joked around with him?
Very briefly.
Did you ever accept payment from law enforcement?
Never.
Okay. And if I may have just one moment.
You may.
Okay, let me air the body cam footage. I meant to do it first, but I'm gonna swap it out here.
Where's that?
You heard a gunshot then?
Yeah, and it was like, and they said it was a raccoon. And it was about that same time, we had set the timeline to Ron, because we checked our phone, and it was like what is the Rob Wood, is that the prosecuting?
Uh-huh.
Okay. We had talked to them and we had looked it up on our phone records to try to put it together, you
Yeah.
know? But like our neighbors up here, like they will go shoot birds and stuff in the mornings. And so we'll hear that sometimes, but it was close. And like our bedroom window's right here. And we sleep with the window open most of the time because
Did you see anybody out there?
no, but we just heard it. So that's what we were thinking. We're like, it was an afternoon because he would have been at work. And it would have been morning. so.
Morning. Huh.
Anyways, we'll just keep
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah, no, and even details that you're like, that's probably nothing. We take them, right?
Well,
I mean, at
that's
this
what we
point, we'll,
decided after we told him, because we're like, we sat on it for a while and then we're like, well, maybe it will help, so.
yeah,
Just our timeline experience with them.
Yeah.
Because we weren't around them a lot, but the few times we were, it's easy to remember because we weren't around them a lot.
yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for talking with me. I appreciate it. I'll let get back to your kids, and I'm sure we're all you're all over the news right now, Fox
You know
News,
what, I
CNN,
was
and-
actually kind of glad that, it wasn't all day. I'm like, are we gonna hear that like all day? Cause it was like nice. This is the most peaceful this road has
Right.
been in
Oh.
so long.
Don't have to worry about kids. They're
Yeah.
no one here, so.
Probably like this, not cartoon.
We seriously do, because we were gonna build our house this year, but I told you like we wanted to get the rest of our debt paid off before we built that. We're just gonna build that here. And we went out there to scope out where we were gonna put it, and I'm like, do you hear that?
Judge, I can stop at this point.
Like just that much further away from it and you don't hear it. Cool. Good.
At least I think I can.
All right.
Oh, you're muted.
Every damn time. The interesting part about that is that what I just played for you is the only clip that Pryor played. He did not play the part where they joked around, I'll pay you $50.
Mm-hmm.
Because he
Yeah.
knew it was a joke.
Mm-hmm.
And then tries to pin this witness down like she's taking bribes.
Yeah.
Taking
He's so
payments in the
slimy.
face. He is.
He's so incredibly slimy and dishonest. It's so wild. But this prosecution just has him beat. Maybe it's because there's 4 of them. Maybe they're just better than he is at this. I don't know. But they have him beat at every turn. Every time he pulls some slimy bullshit like this, they're ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is interesting that she says her husband works afternoons and he was there, so it must have been morning.
Yeah. So if she did hear it on that day,
Mm-hmm.
it could validate what Garth said, but we can never trust what Garth said. But it could mean that both things happened on that day.
Easily.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd also like to know what other weird things they saw.
I know,
At the
right?
Daybell
What did they
house.
talk about?
How come we only got to hear about this? I'd like to hear it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
So that was pretty much it for her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it took a hot minute because of the issues, but with the tech, but we finally got there. Then we find out that Pryor has 2 more witnesses today that are both not there yet.
This is at like 11.
Mm-hmm. 10:49. Yep. So the judge says once the witness comes back, the jury will be back, unless it cuts into the noon hour, which they'll just go ahead and have lunch and then come back. So then we're out of the courtroom for a long time and finally get a notification that the court's going to come back at 12:30.
Mm-hmm.
It finally does come back about 12:35. So then they bring in Asmir Carrick. No, is that how you say that? I think so.
Azir. I
Carrick.
think it's Azir. It's
Azir?
not how. It's not quite how he said it.
Okay.
But he had an accent on it that I cannot reproduce. So I
Okay.
don't know.
So Azir Carrick, an investigator with the Idaho Attorney General's office. So Carrick worked on the case in between, because as you know, we talked about this recently, that there was a crossover when Chad was first arrested and charged with his initial charges. The Fremont County prosecutor was a woman named Marsha Murdoch, but she was leaving and had already, this was the very end of her term. And so she had asked the AG to take over because she didn't want to get deeply involved in a case that she wasn't going to be here for. And also, this was a huge case that had so many moving parts. So then, of course, once Lindsay Blake was elected and took her seat, she asked for the case back, and Carrick was no longer involved. But in the meantime, Carrick had done some work. He had spent about 3 hours and 38 minutes talking to Melanie Gibb. Pryor wants to know, why was this interview so long?
Have you met Melanie Gibb? That chick can talk.
Mm-hmm. He said he had a lot to discuss with Melanie and a lot of questions for her. He asked if he asked anything about Gibb's personal beliefs. He says he didn't understand a lot of what Gibb was talking about, so he asked a lot of questions. Well, yeah, she was talking a lot of nonsense. He was trying to understand what the hell was going on. So he asked him to share some of what Melanie Gibb told him. He says that Gibb spoke about light and dark scale, and that she was able to determine whether a person was light or dark. She also told him he was light. Melanie, shut the hell up.
I've got this part.
Oh, good. Let's see it.
Some of the things that she was talking about is, I call it the scale, the light or dark. She gave me the impression that she can maybe was able to determine if a person was either light or dark.
Is that something that she advised you of?
She kind of hinted at it.
Okay. And there were other options. She talked about her personal understanding of casting.
She did talk about that.
Okay. She talked about her personal understanding of being able to use vibrations as a means of healing or something to that effect.
Something to that effect. Yeah.
And these were visions, excuse me. These were topics that she, in your opinion, she expressed that she had a true belief in. Is that correct?
During the interview, I believe that she believed in that.
Okay. Now, just to reiterate, this was on August 5th of 2020. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it was more than a year after the allegations relating to, now at the end of this, and would it be fair to say that this was sort of a teaching to you of her religious theories and beliefs?
For me, it was, since I didn't really understand it, it felt like she was educating me a lot about her beliefs.
Okay. Okay. And she didn't say where she got these beliefs from, did she?
No,
Okay. She never told you that Chad Daybell taught her about all of these beliefs, did she?
she did talk in the interview that she heard from Chad and Lori some of the same things that she was mentioning.
Okay. But at no time did she tell you that it was Chad Daybell who taught you about all of these unusual I'm sorry, Judge, all of these beliefs that she discussed with you?
Not specifically.
Okay. At some point, the interview ended. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then at some point, there was a further discussion that was off the tape, correct?
Correct.
And in all respect to you, officer, you contacted me and told me about that openly, did you not?
I did.
You discussed with me that upon review and being received a subpoena from my office, you discovered that there was a portion of that interview that was not properly recorded, correct?
Correct.
You didn't anticipate that Ms. Gibb would continue to talk to you after the recording was pushed off, did you?
Correct.
Okay, and what was the topic of that discussion?
After the interview was done, it was more because I was curious. Her talking about the scale of light and dark discussion. I believe she mentioned that I was nice, that I was a good person. And so I just asked the question, what did she believe on the scale? Where would she rate me?
And did she respond to you?
She did.
What did she say?
She stated that I was on the light side, that I was so light that I was given this light aura.
And was that something that she made it? She didn't tell you that was Chad Daybell told her how to do that, did she?
No, she did not.
She did that on her own initiative, is that right?
Objection misstates the evidence.
World.
I have nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
All right.
During your interview with Melanie Gibb, did she ever tell you that she created this belief system that Lori and Chad also adhered to?
No, she did not.
In fact, did she not tell you that she met Chad through Lori and that she was a follower of some of their teachings?
Yes.
Didn't she tell you that Chad would tell Lori about these ideas and that Lori would then convey them to her?
Yes.
So isn't it fair to say that many of these ideas, whether or not Melanie Gibb adhered to them, did in fact come from Chad Daybell?
Judge, objection, speculation.
Your Honor, it goes straight to,
It's overruled, Ms. Beatty.
you may answer.
Yes, I believe so.
No.
I mean,
what else do you say? She was flirty, obviously, and
she's
showing
always
off
flirty.
herself. Yeah, she's always flirty. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, like this is evidence.
Fran
I don't
says,
think this is evidence.
how is this evidence? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
going to help your client in any way.
Yeah.
Fran said he's just jealous because she didn't tell John that he was nice and light.
She didn't. I think John's got a different kind of rating.
I'm sure that's true. So that's pretty much it. Then we get retired police detective Rick Schmidt. They
Yes, and
started
I
with
do
the sidebar.
I do have the meat of this on both sides because
let's do it because it was fast. Yeah.
And pointless.
Good afternoon, Mr. Schmidt.
Hi.
At some point, you were referred to as Officer Schmidt, is that right?
Yes,
That was in June of 2019, 2020.
yes.
And which department were you with, sir?
The Rexburg Police Department?
Okay. At some point, you were assigned a task to participate in some sort of excavation or shovel work on June 9th of 2020 on the Daybell property. Do you recall that?
Yes,
Okay. Do you recall testifying in a previous proceeding last April of 2023 and being asked questions about boundaries and your role in that task that you were tasked with?
yes,
Okay. Do you recall being asked about whether or not there were any boundaries given at that point when you were testifying last April of 2023?
yes.
Do you recall what your response was?
I said there was no boundaries.
Okay. And then you were asked a question about whether or not they said, here's a shovel, go out there and find some stuff. Do you recall being asked about that as well?
Yes,
Do you recall what your response was?
yes.
What was your response?
Something to the fact that, something like that.
Okay. Would it help to refresh your recollection if I showed you something?
Yes,
Judge, may I have the... Now, officer, in that hearing back in April of 2023, you were asked just, hey, here's a shovel, go out there and find some stuff. Do you recall being asked that?
yes,
And what was your response?
pretty much.
Is it possible your response was yes?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
pretty much.
Oh,
Pretty much was in there too.
okay. Pretty much was in there as well. Judge, I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. Cross from the state.
Good afternoon, Mr. Schmidt.
Hi.
Do you still have that transcript up with you?
No,
You were asked about the morning or the events that took place on Chad Daybell's residence on June 9th, 2020, correct?
yes,
And you were asked about some answers you gave in a prior evidentiary hearing.
yes,
Mr. Schmidt, you were asked about your involvement on June 9th, 2020.
yes.
And where were you that day?
On Chad Daybell's property.
And you were asked about a couple of specific questions you were asked last year.
Yes,
Let's talk about that real quick. You were asked about boundaries.
yes,
Do you recall what that question was in regards to?
no,
Would it refresh your memory to see a transcript of what you testified to last year?
yes,
Sorry. I left something in. I was hurrying too much.
It's about boundaries.
in the search, a grid search.
All right. And do you recall what specific area you were searching or that you were asked about searching in regards to those boundaries?
Yes, the fire pit and the pet cemetery areas.
As you sit there today, do you recall there being any type of grid or boundary at those areas when you were searching?
I don't, just right inside the fire pit and then the pet cemetery area. No specific boundaries in relation to those areas.
Do you recall seeing any type of grid placed on the ground?
I don't remember that.
You were also asked about something to the effect of being handed a shovel and walking around.
Yes,
When you first arrived at Mr. Daybell's property, what was the first thing you did?
I don't recall the first thing that I did.
Okay. At any point, did you have a shovel
Yes.
and walk around the property?
Yes,
And was that something you were instructed to do?
yes.
Do you recall who instructed you to do it?
I believe it was Steve Daniels.
And do you recall who Steve Daniels is?
He's FBI. He's with forensic. I think he was in charge of the scene that day.
So in fact, weren't you told before the search really got going in any specific areas, to look around the property and see if you saw anything irregular?
Judge objection goes beyond the scope of direct.
Overruled.
Yes,
And were you with anyone else when you did that?
yes.
Who were you with? Do you remember?
I remember Colin Erickson from the police department and Travis, I can't remember his last name, but he was FBI. And we were instructed to walk around the field and look for soft spots or different areas that looked different.
Oh, now you're muted.
Oh, I did. I pushed my button.
I'm not muted. You're muted.
I want to say immediately that I feel like Steve must be unwell. The way he is
He does
speaking
not
makes
seem
me
well.
think he's unwell. Which makes him not a great witness, but I think he was doing the best he could there. But that was the most weird and pointless questioning I don't understand. They did have some areas to search. We know this from everything that the FBI has said, other officers have said, and obviously he did have some direction on where to dig because they were in the fire pit and the pond area.
Yeah,
Exactly where the kids were found.
those would be called boundaries. Like, this is an area we want you to search.
Mm-hmm.
I
There's-
also think Pryor focused on just go and find some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's trying to discredit the search
Yeah.
in a really stupid way.
Which, again, they found the kids.
Right.
So they clearly were barking up the correct tree. They didn't dig a lot in other places. They didn't completely upend that property. They didn't dig up Chad's front yard. They didn't tear down his fences and make a big mess at all. You would have
They
been
didn't even find the
surprised.
raccoons that
Yeah.
that were buried in front of by the silver shed.
Mm-hmm. You wouldn't have. I would have been surprised. You would have been surprised to see the scene that day. How very little of the ground they actually disturbed. It wasn't
They
a
knew
lot.
exactly where they were looking before they started. Thanks
I wondered if
to
Chad was mostly
Agent
just.
Hope and some of the others.
Yeah. I just wondered if Chad was a little jealous in learning that Steve Schmidt does in fact know how to use a shovel. But
Right?
also, and I had one of you guys said this too. I had wondered if he was going to ask him if the shovel came from the shed or from the garage. Yeah.
I was expecting that too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Though he did not go there. But
I
what
think
an
Pryor was
epic
melting
waste
down
of time.
today. Everything went wrong
Yeah.
that could have gone wrong, that made him look stupid, and nothing really landed in a way that I think had an impact on the jury.
It is an incredibly bad look for the judge to not have your witnesses in line, to not have people
Right?
there when they're supposed to testify. And then everything he had booked today, we were done at that point, and it was barely after 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Barely after 1 o'clock. And the judge hates that. He does not want to waste the jury's time. This is not a good look at all. Yeah, Pryor was a hot mess today. Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
And this stuff just didn't have any impact.
Yeah.
I mean, you find out that that his alternate to the crime with Tammy is not natural death, which is what he keeps bitching about, but unspecified.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out the jury heard that, how little evidence she actually had to go on.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. What a huge waste. What a huge waste. For whatever he paid her, it was too fucking much because she didn't really have anything. That was no smoking gun to the jury. I can't imagine the jury listened to that and thought that would told them anything.
Right.
Yeah, today
Yes,
did not go
and
well.
Boyce did apologize to the jury. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well,
'Cause
he
wasting
hates.
their time is bullshit.
And Boyce is famously respectful to the jury and takes excellent care of the jury. I mean, that speaks, the fact that we still have 17 jurors out of 18 at this point says everything.
Mm-hmm.
They are
It does.
committed. And he has taken good enough care of them in his court for them to come back. For,
Right.
they've been excellent. So he has expert witnesses flying in that are scheduled to be here at 8:30 in the morning. So that's what we're, dare I say, looking forward to tomorrow.
I doubt that.
Belligerent turd circus, indeed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
surely was.
Ina said Emma and Joe's rent just went up to cover the doctor's testimony fee.
Right? What was the point of that?
Yeah.
She couldn't give anything definitive. So how was that helpful?
Mm-hmm.
I guess creating doubt, but did it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I heard all the stuff that she didn't review, including Tammy's own medical records, I was like, what the hell are we even doing here?
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think tomorrow could easily be the last day. I think he could easily rest tomorrow. Yep. And then
Here, they want to see your
rebuttal.
face, and look at the camera for a sec.
We'd like a different
She's
angle of
so-
you there, Sam.
She's so beautiful. She has the best eyeliner of anyone I've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm jealous because I cannot do eyeliner for shit, but she has the most beautiful markings around her eyes.
Mm-hmm. Just naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the expert witnesses tomorrow could be. I was surprised he didn't have the doctor from Boise in today.
Right? Is he even
Handpickian.
really going to have Handpickian?
I mean, it would have
What
been
is-
a lot easier to get him there.
Yeah. And what is the actual purpose of Handpickian coming in?
Yeah.
He's the DNA guy.
Right.
What DNA? DNA, this case does not hinge on DNA at all.
No. I think we will see Patrick Eller tomorrow. Patrick Eller is the digital forensics examiner. He's the one that's going to try and come and pick holes in Alex's phone location data.
Yeah.
I think
gonna
we'll
try
see
it.
him tomorrow. Yep. I think we might see the forensic anthropologist tomorrow that's
Yeah.
supposed to come in and talk to us about why all of Tylee's bones weren't there.
It's not as though they know.
No.
It's just conjecture. No one knows.
Yeah. Yes, Sarah, in the Bings. Yes.
In the bings, yes.
Mhm.
Also the beeps. The bings
Yep.
and the beeps.
The Bings and the beeps. Alex's phone was special, guys. It binged and it beeped. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we'll have them. Again, Handpickian, I don't know why he wasn't there today. I really don't. Maybe he's not coming.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I can imagine that he's a very expensive expert,
Yeah.
considering his world-renowned status. Whether he's from Boise or not, he's not cheap.
Mm-hmm. No. No, he couldn't be. Nope.
They will determine that Tammy's DNA belongs to her. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
You think he's going to try and say that the animals dragged the bones there? Maybe. And the big green bucket, too, right?
Did they light the bonfire too? I mean, he's been trying to lay this whole thing on raccoons the whole damn time, so.
Right. Yeah. True.
Right,
He
he
did.
didn't ask about lapidity.
Yep. He controlled himself and didn't ask about lapidity. Yep.
No.
Yeah, he didn't want to pay waiting time for Bartling. Bartling, thank you, Rom. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember that name. Well, yeah, he didn't want to pay waiting time for any of them. So it takes me back to the medical examiner lady this morning for just a minute, who wasn't actually an ME, but why didn't Pryor give her all of that stuff? Is it because he just wanted to pigeonhole her into saying one very specific thing? Or is it because he didn't want to pay for her to go through all of those things? We are talking about somewhere between $200 to $400 an hour. Did he say, I'm going to give you very specifically what I want you to see so that you say the things I want to say, and because I don't want to pay you for doing extensive work?
Yeah.
I think both could be true. But
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, somebody's saying 144,000 raccoons with paintball guns or wielding pickaxes. Right. I mean, that's who buried the kids in the backyard, right?
Mm-hmm. Now that's an AI prompt for you. 144,000 raccoons with paintball guns. Yeah. Yikes. So, when he said he had 3, maybe 4 of Chad's kids to come on the stand, We've seen two of Chad's
Two.
kids. Two. Because Joseph isn't one of Chad's kids, but we kind of expected he was going to be included in the number.
Yeah,
Are we going to
definitely.
see any others?
I doubt it.
Are we going to see
I
Miss
really
Kara Daybell? I kind of think we're done with the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will bet that the rest of the kids don't want a damn thing to do with any of this
Mm-hmm.
or Garth and Emma at
Yep.
this point.
Yep.
I can't imagine.
I think that's it. So I suspect he will rest tomorrow. And I would imagine tomorrow's another short day of court. Because then the prosecution's going to need a second to catch their breath to be able to start redirect. Though, if I know this prosecution, they'll probably have a detective down there tomorrow ready in case they need to start tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Well, they had a discussion at one point that they needed to have a longer hearing because they had a bunch of exhibits coming in. Well, the only exhibits coming in now are on rebuttal. Everything else is in. That they needed to get the numbers right and get everything organized with the clerk and stuff. That they were going to have another hearing that was going to be off the record because it was just like administrative. Well, yeah, because we know exactly what that is. They're going to impeach Emma, Garth, and Joe.
Yep. And it's not going to be that hard. Those jail calls are coming. I am so here for it. I honestly cannot wait for rebuttal.
I know. Me too. Yes, and getting ready to sequester the jury. That's right. He said they needed to make a plan on that as well. So we know what's coming.
Amber, I had the same thought. She said Samantha said she doesn't speak to most of them anymore, which makes me think she does talk to some of them, but they hide it from Emma. Indeed. That was exactly what I thought too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you imagine being Tammy's sister sitting in that courtroom listening to these idiots?
No.
Poor Vicky.
Hell no.
Jesus.
That sounds absolutely terrible. Yeah. So, and then of course, yes, B. Adams, good point. They're getting ready to sequester the jury. Because as soon as the verdict is read, the jury is sequestered. And they're saying that penalty phase could last up to 2 weeks. It won't, but they're saying that it could.
It'll be shorter.
It'll be shorter than that. But that's going to get interesting. And I know I've said it a million times, but I really, really, really hope that the prosecution is bringing in Dr. Wellner. Really hope.
I know, me too. Come on, man. Bring in Wellner. We just want to hear what he has to say.
We've been desperate to hear from him. Yeah. And in case you're wondering, Dr. Michael Wellner is a forensic psychologist who would have been testifying at Lori's penalty phase had there been one in this aspect, but with the death penalty off the table, it's done differently. But Dr. Wellner is a forensic psychologist that specializes in cults and in Mormon criminology.
Yeah, particularly.
He was the star witness in the penalty phase of the Elizabeth Smart kidnapping trial.
Yeah, Brian David Mitchell.
And others. And he is a fascinating person. Anyway, we've been hoping forever we were going to see Dr. Wellner on the stand.
Heck yeah. Still, I agree. I really hope so.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we're thinking. Do you guys have any questions or thoughts before we bounce? Have we covered it? I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, it wasn't hard to cover today.
No, and just a reminder that if there is court on Friday, we will be doing the summary right after court because we're headed camping for the long weekend. So just be aware. We're just kind of keeping an eye because we don't even know if there will be court on Friday.
Yeah.
At this
we're
point,
kind of hoping that everybody gets a 4-day weekend. Wouldn't that be good?
That's what I'm wondering.
I think before the juries get sequestered, they damn well deserve that. But
right.
That's oh yeah, Star's good. This is going to get so interesting. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Indeed. Yep.
It's payback.
If the prosecution, Hippie wants to know if the prosecution has rested, how can they bring in calls from Emma? Well, because the door was open to that in the defense's.
Yeah.
Pryor opened the door to it because he questioned her about those calls.
Yes, and Emma lied directly to the prosecutor in being asked about calls that they referenced the date when, the conversation that was had, and she lied about what they know to be in the calls because they have the calls. So they have the right to come back for rebuttal if that door gets opened, and it's wide open, you guys. All three of them lied.
Yeah.
About what they said on phone calls and in police interviews. So,
and the prosecution's going to come both barrels. They're going to come with so many receipts that it will leave
makes me
absolutely
wonder
no
if they will
question.
get Emma, particularly, if they will actually get her testimony thrown out, which can happen. If they determine that she was just lying her ass off the whole time, the jury could be instructed that they can't take anything into account that she said, which would be very interesting. I don't know if it'll go that far or not, but it's possible.
Brandon said he hopes we have all the fun on our trip. Brandon, let me tell you something. We're going to have so much fun that we're going to roll in here sideways on Tuesday morning in sunglasses. I promise.
Probably. Yeah, we're kind of known for having all the fun. We have a lot of fun stuff planned. It's going to be awesome. I cannot wait.
This is our favorite trip. I'm just excited. All my kids will be home for this one. In the last 2 years, I only had one of them or two of them. But my son hasn't been able to come for 2 years. So I'm so excited that he gets to come home and we all get to go. We're going to have a blast. Yeah.
Yes, we are.
We're a party.
Yeah, we are.
At least we think we are. I don't know.
We're a large, very loud party.
Some of the more
there's a lot of us.
Some of the more introverted members of our family sometimes retreat to their camper or tent or car or whatnot to just get the hell away. I'm sure it's because we're a lot. Yeah.
We are. That's all right. Because
I'm sure we'll have some stories, and we'll definitely have some pictures because it's one of the most beautiful places on earth.
It is, yeah.
What are our cocktails? Oh, Jamie. Listen, I'm going to tell you 2 that I made today, and you'll have to figure out what these mean. But these were individual cocktails I'm putting together in drink bags. One of them was called Soaking, and the other one was called the Jump Humper.
This is consider this is in reference to Mormons. If you do a little, I would recommend a TikTok search about either of those things. You are going to get an education.
Yep. I also made the St. Anthony Slut today. That'll be a good one. Yep.
That is naughty as hell.
Mostly my husband, has to retreat to the camper or home. We still have to come home twice a day to feed the pigs or hire our piggy sitter, but she's worked a lot for us this spring, so I hate to bother her. But because the pigs have to be fed twice a day and on time because pigs have low blood sugar. So you got to feed them on time. Yeah. I do have a drink plan that's a 4.3 dark. And another
I
one.
gotta find a good. I know what my drink is, but it doesn't have a clever name yet, so I'm still working on that.
The other one is Moroni's Storm. And there's others. There was a sticker for Voluminous, yeah. It's the pearl clutching one that says, "Quite frankly, Your Honor, it's voluminous." And there's pearls across the front of it. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, here, let me show you something real quick. Actually, I got my stickers.
Oh.
And I put them all on my editing laptop.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
Because this laptop spends many hours a day working for True Crime Squad. So I thought,
right. It should be there.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Kara better not get Moroni's Storm. You're getting it. Oh, you're getting it all right.
See, I gotta find a name for my drink, so I got it. I'm thinking about it.
I don't know if our drinks are gonna look better than they taste. I don't know.
Hiplos Fizz. As those of you that know me, mine is a whiskey drink, so
I'm making another one called
Whiskey Girl.
Kolob's Nectar.
Oh my god.
And another one that's called Monkey Tits, and I don't even know why, but anyway.
I mean, sure.
So sorry about all that, but we'll tell you all about it, I'm sure.
We will, definitely.
Well, let's Fizzy Gibbs. Gosh. this could really get wild. All of our friends and family are going to be like, why is every single one of these drinks based on Chad Daybell in some way? Well, that's because,
Guys,
yeah.
we're deep in right now. Deep
it's
in.
all we're thinking about. I was at the doctor today and talking about the fact that this is a very stupid story, but I have a medical treatment that I'm supposed to have once a week that I haven't had in a year because I quit doing it. I quit going. It's a physical therapy thing. I quit going during Lori's trial because I just didn't have time, which is stupid as well. I know, I get it. But it got, anyway, I got overall overwhelmed. No, we can see you, Rebecca. Did I miss something? Throw it back up there again. The chat's just moving fast. Anyway, so I said to her, I've just been really overwhelmed with first the Daybell trial and now the Vallow trial and now it's the Daybell trial, but I need to get back to PT and I need a new referral. And she said, anyway, I said, covering these trials. And she said, I didn't know you were a journalist. I said, I'm not. I'm a true crime podcaster. And we had this funny conversation about the fact that she knows Ronnie Arnold. And somebody was in her office saying that Ron Arnold is a hero. And she was like, wait, say what now? Anyway, we had a hilarious conversation about it. It just made me laugh. It's such a small world around here.
It is. You just don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah. But she knew. So funny. Let's see, Rebecca. I didn't want to miss your question again, but I haven't seen it come up.
I know. I was trying to look for it. It's just this chat's moving a lot faster at the moment, and sometimes it gets by us while we're talking.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh, it
scrolling.
was about perjury not causing legal problems anymore. Well, perjury can. It's really hard to prove, apparently, and it's unlikely that she would actually be charged with it, but it is possible to potentially throw her testimony out. So
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, they
Yeah.
could charge her with perjury, but we're not. I think they're more concerned at this point about convicting Chad than they are about taking that on with the kids. And it doesn't mean that they can't after this trial's over, too. I mean,
True.
that's.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
So the question is, or the answer is yes, but unlikely. Yeah. The pasture portal. The PWAP. Why? How did we not have a PWAP? I mean, we still could, but no one's going to pick it. No one will pick it. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm still trying to plan my name. Maybe I'll have one tomorrow for you.
Maybe. Well, I have to say that the soaker and the jump humper are both pickle shots, and the bag has those giant pickles in them that you get at the gas station that have like all the water or the pickle juice in them.
Oh my
And vodka. They're pickleback shots. Anyway, I thought that was perfect for the jump humper and the soaker. But anyway, actually, Mars picked these. I shouldn't take all the credit. She's the one that named those. But
That's hilarious.
anyway, that's all. Yeah. All righty. Well, let's do it. Let's go.
Let's do.
So we'll be back at 8:30 in the morning to see what Pryor's got up his sleeve.
Yeah.
Or
I
doesn't.
sure will. Right?
Yeah.
Who knows at this point?
Mm-hmm. All right, you guys. Have a great night. This has been oh, wait. I always forget. I'm terrible. If you would like to tip us, you can do that. The super chat is on. You can also go to truecrimesquad.com. There's multiple ways there to tip us. There is also links there for our Etsy store, for our merch store, as well as for Kristi's Instagram store. So you can find us either way. And
Somebody bought a couple of snails. I'm so excited. I got to get those in the mail before we leave. Sorry about that.
I was like, I guess we're done.
My finger was on it. Ready. A little too ready, I think.
Mm-hmm. All righty. Well, we'll see you tomorrow. This has been yet another production of the True Crime Squad.
Bye, everybody.